Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland Vintage Roadshow here on the SPM Crew Podcasting Network. And this is my monthly show where I just get to gush about my favorite movies. And I'm joined by a guest, is my frequent collaborator, friend, and also an SPM Crew member, and it's Luke. Luke, thank you so much for coming on. Oh, the
Yeah,
laughter in
the
this.
laughter.
Oh, just you wait. You think that all these amazing auteurs of all different kinds of arts weren't a bunch of horny little shits that go around giggling and stuff like that. And that's what you'll find out by
hmm
watching
Yep.
Amadeus from director Milos Forman, which this is such an interesting biopic because it's not from the perspective of an omniscient narrator or anything, and it's not from the perspective of Mozart.
hmm
It's by one of his rivals telling the story from his perspective and just being like, but I am a great artist. I put in so much effort. Why is this little horn dog little shit the one that has all the talent?
Yep.
And that's Amadeus in a nutshell. But what I would like to start off by talking about, because I usually start the show off doing some like broader overall topics.
hmm
But Luke, what's your general feeling or experience with like classical music or opera?
So, as a very educated person, I have zero experience with opera or classical music. I I do appreciate. I think it's one of those like, as you know, the older you get, the more you actually appreciate it. I think there's something in most of kids' genes, like programmed into us, where you hear classical music when you're like 10, and it's like, what is this shit? And then when you like, as you grow older and appreciate the finer thing,
Mhm.
I feel like, now like I'm at the point where like the music here is used sparsely, actually, for
Yep.
a movie about a biopic about one of the most genius composers of all the time, really. But I really liked all the music, even though it's not as much as you would think.
Mhm.
There's a lot of silence, and I think that's very purposeful.
Well, and I guess my experience with classical music, there's some classical music that has like been
Mhm.
burned in my brain, like O Fortuna,
Yeah.
specifically because of Excalibur. Because
Ah.
when I watched that movie in, I think it was high school in British Lit, which wild.
hmm
We watched that in school. Seeing as there's like my class did not handle the rape scene at the beginning where this woman is completely naked and Uther Pendragon is in full armor.
Yes,
Like Excalibur's a wild movie, but
it
the way
is.
that it uses O Fortuna in just such this big, impactful way, like that
hmm
gets me hyped. That gets me hyped on a level of like Thunderstruck gets me hyped. Yes, I just compared classical music to AC/DC, so you're welcome. Um, but I've listened to classical music and appreciate classical music, and I
hmm
think it's because like I don't listen to it regularly, but I think it kind of is that like if you like film scores,
Yeah.
you're probably gonna like classical music because it is composition. That's what
hmm
it is. Um, Especially if you love like John Williams and like really like the classic orchestral kind of scores. And opera, I have never watched an opera, but
Me
I'm
neither.
getting so close to actually going to one of those Fathom events where they
hmm
play the Metropolitan Opera in theaters because like I don't know if it's between like watching this
hmm
or like The Godfather Part 3, which, yes, I'm talking about The Godfather Part 3 in a positive and impactful way. Um, it just has gotten me to the point where it's like, I think it'd be really cool to check out an opera. And to be fair, I also listen to Andrea Bocelli and Luciano Pavarotti. So,
hmm
like, I do actually listen to some opera music and stuff like that. And, Phantom. But, like, that's like popcorn opera.
I was gonna say that's like fake opera, like fake opera.
but like that's Andrew Lloyd Webber's interpretation of opera.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
like it's one of those kinds of things where I think I would really love actually going to an opera.
Hmm.
Like, and I could hop a train and go to New York City and go to an opera.
You lucky
Um,
bastard.
I will that, and that's the thing, because like I live close enough to New York where I could do it in a day. It's just
Hmm.
annoying, but it still works. But then also I'm cheap, and I have to check how much going to an opera is because like Broadway's bad enough.
Hmm.
And I can only imagine going to an opera is more expensive.
The cinema we have here, they actually do like what they call event cinema nowadays. I think there probably is in America as well, where every
It's
like month you get like either like a live stream or actually or
mm,
like a recording of like ballet or an
yeah,
opera. And when I see the trailer, I'm always like I actually would be keen to go because again, like my closest is in London, which it's not an hour or a train. Like technically, it is a train ride away, but a train ride is like 10 hours, even the
yeah,
fucking train. And a
yeah,
plane, like obviously I can take a plane, but it money, and also
yes,
then like and the opera's expensive also. So like, but I'm like I would actually be keen on going to the local cinema, to my local cinema, and watching it like one evening, like especially if it's like a live performance, because there are some like live performances for like one night only. This live performance will be broadcasted, and I'm like,
yeah.
that's pretty cool.
Well, it's I think here specifically, it's like Fathom.
Mm.
They're the ones that do a lot of those kinds of things. But like, yeah, I see that bumper at AMC all the time, and I'm like, you know what? One of these days,
Yep,
I'm gonna
yep,
go on a Saturday night and go watch an opera.
same.
Um, so and then obviously I brought up this as a biopic. It's a very like I feel like people would say this is like, oh, it's just a biopic, but like it's not.
No, it's
Like
not. Yeah.
this is structurally very different than what you would expect from a biopic. But I do feel like this would be a really interesting experience. Like what I want to bring up next is biopics,
Okay.
because like I feel like biopics get a bad rap at this point because
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
so many of them play into the same formula and stuff like that. But I guess like what are some biopics that you really enjoy that stick out to you?
Well, one of the latest example would be A Complete Unknown. You know, there's two people on this call, and I happen to know one of the people here really loved that movie.
It did. So
But in general, I'm kind of I'm not gonna say I'm sick and tired of biopics, but I definitely subscribe to what you're 100% right. There is a formula, and many biopics they do stick to it. Like perfect example is like the Bob Marley one that came out like 2 years ago now or 1 year
yes.
ago. And to me, somebody as unique and as strong of an influence he's had in his fairly short life on a pop culture and a music genre in general, and bringing uh wait, is it just called Rasta music or is it reggae? Reggae?
Reggae.
Yeah, as you can tell, I'm a big fan. uh, for that somebody of that stature, that biopic was fine,
Yeah.
and I wish it wasn't just fine. So here, that's where we need somebody of a caliber of Milos Forman to deliver. But because I would also question, like, technically it's a biopic, but realistically it's not. And I wouldn't even say because of the like narrative choice or whatever. I would say
Like, is
if
it
you actually
true?
read, that's the thing. If you read about, first of all, people, don't take your history from movies. Movies are awesome. Do not, even the most historical accurate movie still needs to be adjusted.
Yes.
There's characters that are invented for story purposes. There are scenes. Don't take
Mm.
your history from movies. But this one specifically, as much as I love this movie too. You know, there is little to no evidence to many of the things. Like, for example, the main plot, they were not a rival, like per se. Apparently, Salieri even gave private lessons to Mozart's son. So they were not like mortal enemies by any means. They were like probably like respected each other. So this is like in
Yeah,
that
but this is
sense,
so much saucier this way.
exactly, that's the thing. So in that sense, I don't think it's a biopic, but also it kind of is because there was a dude called Mozart. He did some incredible things, and the movie showcases that so fucking well. Like every once in a while, it was like, this dude is just fucking just a child, and then he does something that's out of this world,
And then
and
he's
you're
just
like,
noodling along. It's like, what if you did this?
yeah,
And then it's just like, and he just transforms this nice piece of music into like, oh my god, that's something special. It's
like
just
how
like,
he rewrites
damn,
the Salieri's music he's worked so hard on, and
right
like,
in front of him.
have you thought about this? Oh, what about no, no, no? Let me try this as he's going along, and I'm like, get fucked, but also that's impressive.
We will get to his most
Yeah, yeah.
impressive piece of genius, which is the end.
Yes, yes.
But in terms of biopics, one, if James Mangold made it, I'm all about it. A Complete Unknown, Walk the Line, like
Hmm.
those are really great ones. I feel like Ray
Yep, yep.
was the one that like came out and then everybody's like biopics.
Hmm.
Um in recent years, I feel like Better Man and Rocket Man actually, yeah, which is
I've never
interesting.
never seen either of those men yet. To be fair, haven't seen either of those men.
I would you like Rocket Man. I would 100% recommend. Like, yes,
It's on my shelf. That's on my shelf. Yes,
yeah,
waiting.
but like they both took who they're about,
Hmm.
injected their personality into the movie,
Hmm.
and made it feel different. Like the whole entire idea of Better Man, where you have and I'm gonna say this very clearly, a CGI ape, not monkey. He is a chimpanzee. He is an ape. Honestly, Luke, that's one of my biggest pet peeves is people not understanding if it has a tail, it's a monkey. If it doesn't have a tail, it's an ape. But like if I had to hear another person say that, oh, Better Man, that one with the monkey in it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Sorry. I'll get off my my frustration horse here. But no, where they had like Robbie Williams as a chimpanzee,
Hmm.
that was an interesting choice. And then what they do with it is even crazier at times. But no, Rocket Man turning it into a musical
Hmm.
and using Elton John's music, that was so creative. And it's like the anti Bohemian Rhapsody, which Bohemian Rhapsody is the most obnoxiously, I'm a biopic and not even a well made one. Like the
Hmm.
editing was trash despite the fact that it won
It won.
best
Yeah,
editing.
yeah, yep.
Um, I feel like if the film injects a fresh personality into it,
Hmm.
it does something interesting and it stands out. Or just like I feel like some of the best biopics are about people we don't know much about because
That's the
then there's
thing.
not
Yeah.
all this expectations. Like we're not like shackled to, well, we have to hit the greatest hits then. Because like Braveheart. I
Hmm.
love Braveheart, the most historically
I was
inaccurate
gonna
movie
say.
ever. But like, I love Braveheart. Did most Americans know shit about William Wallace?
Mm-mm.
No. Did Scottish people? Yeah, and I wonder how Scottish people feel about Braveheart. Probably not great. And
Most don't
like,
really like it.
no, I would imagine not. And then you have Rob Roy,
Hmm.
which I'm a huge fan of too. I recently rewatched that with Liam Neeson as Rob Roy McGregor. Yes, aggressively Irishman playing aggressively Scotsman. But like those kinds of films I think stand out from a biopic standpoint because they feel more mythological.
Hmm.
And I feel like that's what Milos Forman did with this.
Yes, yes, 100%.
Made it feel more mythological. So I feel like those are the reasons why like some biopics really stand out to me.
See, like, just from my perspective, for me, if I watch a biopic and then at the end, I don't think I know the person any more than I knew about them before, or what I could have,
What was the point?
read on like a Wikipedia, their Wikipedia page. Like
Yeah.
a great example is the United States versus Billie Holiday. Is that
Yep.
except for that one great performance by what's her name, Andrea
Andra Day.
Andre? Yeah, she was phenomenal, but the movie failed to rise to her, and the movie was
Yes.
yet again beat by beat what you would suspect it's gonna be
Mhm.
about. And I'm like, I understand her pain, but I don't think I really understood her as more of a person than what I would have read on my own in 2 minutes on Wikipedia. And I
Mhm.
think that's what the clever choice here is. Hey, let's have a fun about with this. What would like, because how a life would look like if you were smart enough and talented enough to to be a great composer, but you would live in an era that's where Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart also happened to live,
Mhm.
right?
Absolutely. And it's so interesting because, like, I would not say I'm a big biopic fan,
Mm-hmm.
but it's very interesting because my number one film of the past 2 years has been a biopic. Because the year before was The Iron Claw,
Yeah, yeah.
and which, like, that's fantastic. And I think what really stood out about that to me was like, is there a little bias there because am I a professional wrestling fan? But like it's impeccably directed and it's
Mm-hmm.
so artistic and there's
Mm-hmm.
just so much emotion. But I'm like looking at my top movies list and it takes until like number 98 for me to reach a biopic
Mm-hmm.
and it's Patton.
Okay. Okay.
And like that really stands on George C. Scott and then Braveheart at 100 and then Oppenheimer at 102. So like and like the reason I love Oppenheimer, it's the Nolan of it all and just how creative and how interesting it was told and everything. And those are important pieces. Now, let's get into the film in terms of talking about Amadeus, but I
Mm-hmm.
feel like a great place to start is Milos Forman.
Yes.
He directs the hell out of this movie.
Mm-hmm. Well, there is a reason why he is only one of the 3 or 4 people who won best director and best movie for the same movie the same year at the Oscars. Like he's like genuine. Like I think it's like Clint Eastwood, him, and I think John Ford, maybe. Like like there's like only 3 or 4 names, and he is one of them. And Milos Forman, like his, if you have not seen a documentary, What Doesn't Kill You, it's been made when he was still alive because he sadly passed away a couple of years ago, with him in it, reflecting on his life. It's a 4 hour documentary, but it's like genuinely flies by. And I don't really watch many documentaries, so like coming from me, that's something. It's fucking awesome. Like he comes from where I come from, but I didn't have to escape communism. He had to, because
Mhm.
he's made some great movies in Czechoslovakia, back in Czechoslovakia, now Czech Republic. He made some great movies, and as his career was taking off, so he took off from Czechoslovakia because
Yes.
1968, certain communism, certain Russians and other countries have crossed our borders and said, "This is ours now because you guys have a bit too much freedom here, and this is not too much, too communist." And he, yeah, had to go to America to be able to make movies. And this theme of a one man, battling a system, whether it's mental institution in or One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, or here Mozart, despite all his talent, he's still not as popular in, especially in Vienna, because of reasons and jealousy. Like I think you can tell throughout his movies, like that there's always that key theme of there's a man against some sort of system, and here it's, yeah, it's Foreman was one of the best, and I might be slightly biased there, but hey.
But like he just captures the pageantry, the drama of this all. And there's so many interesting choices
Mm-hmm,
from a directing standpoint. And like you said, the music is only used in very specific moments
mm-hmm.
to reach maximum effect. And the way that he directs the opera sequences makes me want to go to the opera.
Yeah.
And that's what's so effective about it. And just the way that he stages everything, the choices, the how elaborate everything is, the decadence that's on screen. And it's all important for us to understand just how grand and opulent this time was. Because
Mm-hmm.
then we have to see it in stark contrast with, the basically like the community theater um version of what Mozart winds up getting involved in, like Simon Callow's character, and
Mm-hmm.
just the complete difference between that and the emperor's
Yeah.
uh his whole situation. There's just a grand feel to this, and there's an emotion. There's such great atmosphere about this film, and it all comes down to Foreman orchestrating,
Yeah.
this whole entire film perfectly.
Mm-hmm. I will say 100% what you said. The movie is also shot beautifully. And he, before he passed away, he was on the record saying he views this as the biggest travesty in his career. Not that he didn't win more, that Miroslav Ondříček, the cameraman, never
Hmm.
did not win for this movie particularly. Like the camera work, this is the Revenant pre-Revenant because they only used natural light through all this movie. And if you watch this movie, and I watched the director's cut, the 3 hour version, each fucking scene is immaculate. Like, it
Yep.
looks, no matter if we are in the snow, no matter if we are in a palace with one of the emperors, no matter if we are in his apartment, every scene looks awesome. The shadow play, the guy, like,
Yep.
the Don Giovanni opera and the black monster, and then Salieri in that mask. I'm like,
Yes.
holy fucking shit. It's just, and yeah, so it's like this movie won a Oscar, so it did quite well. But
Yes.
Milos Forman himself was on record saying he would never understand how Miroslav Ondříček never won or has not won for this movie. And I don't know if whether he actually won an Oscar, but like he was a great filmmaker. He was a great cinematographer, and and that's part of it, right? Is like all of these need to be in sync for us to care about biopics. Because again, as
Yes.
we mentioned before, if not, then you start to see a lot of it is the same. A lot of it there's a formula to it. You need to hit this. You need to hit this. And I also was very intrigued and very pleased to see or to be reminded, hey, we don't have this is where he composes the most famous melody.
Yeah.
We don't see that scene where it's like like he's like working on something big, and we think, oh, I thought, oh, that's his most the most known to. No, it was Don Giovanni, and I'm
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, and again, lesser movie would be like, I'm working on something big, and it's gonna be and I'm
Mhm.
like, yeah, but this movie doesn't do that. Like it showcases you on the other hand everything else he's done but that, right?
Mhm.
And I really like that.
This is this is a film about characters
Hmm.
and conflict because it
Hmm.
treats it like a film. It
Yes.
treats it like a film instead of just trying to put a Wikipedia page in motion.
Hmm.
And that's what's important. And I was having a hell of a time trying to navigate the Oscars website on my phone, trying to pull up because it was Chris Menges for The Killing Fields that won cinematography for this. I was half
Hmm.
expected to see it was a passage to India
Hmm.
because this is an interesting point that I feel like wrap up talking specifically about Milos Forman is because I feel like a lot of people would write this film off as being this Oscar baity period piece.
Hmm.
That is not what this is. A Passage to India was the Oscar baity period piece that was set up to be like, oh, this is going to sweep the Oscars. No,
Hmm.
this. Because there's something what Milos Forman does with this film makes it transcend just being a biopic.
Hmm.
This feels like a masterful piece of cinema
Hmm.
because everything works about it. And it all comes from the conductor,
Yes.
and that's the director. And yes, I am using this terminology on purpose. Um, in terms of the writing, this frame narrative is fascinating because I
Mm-hmm.
feel like it's one of the things that makes it so unique is that we open the film with Salieri trying to kill himself
Mm-hmm.
and then getting put in the sanitarium and having this priest come to him because he like confessed to murdering someone.
Yes, he was screaming that, I confess, I killed Mozart.
Yeah,
It was me.
it was me. But this whole entire frame narrative where you hear this from this decaying old man who has been sitting on guilt and jealousy and has such a fascinating perspective on the world because this is a man who thought that he had divine
Yep.
support in his mission to be a great composer. And you get this, and it's such an interesting thing that he's sitting across from a priest. And that's what makes it so compelling and interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And being a Roman Catholic, being somebody who grew up with the guiltiest of Christian
Yeah.
um backgrounds, it's just him being like, my father didn't want me to be an
Mm-hmm.
artist. And then I prayed to God,
And a miracle happened.
and a miracle happened. Then my father died. And you're like looking around like, this is a madman. And this is going to be
Mm-hmm.
entertaining as hell. And it is. He is such an engaging narrator. And he is definitely not a trustworthy narrator because he's a senile old man that we cannot trust anything. Like he thinks that he has a connection with God until he watched Mozart's opera for the first time and knew that there was no God. That the second he chucked like crucifix into the fire with that, I'm just like,
Yep.
damn. Just there's just a power
Mm-hmm.
to this frame narrative and how it sets up this whole entire story.
And it's not even about him being senile. He's a bitter old man. And
Yes.
I think, as far as like narrative goes, I found this fascinating on my. This is my second rewatch. I watched this movie once when I was very young, so felt very fresh. But I still remembered quite a few sequences actually. So that I think speaks about the quality of the movie. If a dumb 14, 13 year old when I watched it, still remembers quite a few scenes, that speaks not about this, this person, more about the quality of the movie. And what I realized watching this, you can tell Foreman is coming from the old school of Hollywood, and we live in a new school. What I mean by that, many times we get introduced to characters, and we need to work out what they are about by the end of the movie, right? Something is revealed, and at the end it all clicks. But in here, we meet Salieri, and within the first 5 minutes, just him talking, you know exactly what he's on about. It's so purposeful that the first time we actually meet Mozart's character, he's acting like a child. Like yeah, we see him like being a child. We see him being literal child playing blindfolded, all that. But when we see Tom Holtz, is how you pronounce it?
Holtz. Yeah.
Yeah, when he literally is just chasing his wife to be, and then like basically is maybe implied he wants to have a sexy time with her before they go to see Emperor, and he behaves like a child. And when, just from that introduction, you know exactly what this guy is about. And then so that's before we see his genius in play. We see him being this infant, almost idiot, right? And then you see that genius in play. It's like, oh, they started my music without me. How dare they? It's just like, and it storms off. And I love that how Foreman, again, that old school of Hollywood where, like, character comes into the scene, they do something, they say something, and you know exactly what that character is about. And then you have the rest of the movie to kind of maybe, like, peel another layer off. And here, like, when you mentioned religion, that's another big theme for Milch's movies. I don't think he was very pro religion, and especially this kind of person who believes he's religious. When
Yes.
this kind of, I would almost call them fake religious people, where they all praise God. They live in, like, oh, I live based on what he says, right? Like, he even says, I give up women. I've never laid my hand on any women. Like, I was celibate. I was because of purpose of this great career. But everything Salieri does in this movie is the total fucking opposite of how a good Christian or a person of faith should act like, right? He is pointing out the hypocrisy, like, oh yeah, I dedicate my life. Where's my reward? He's
Yep.
still bitter. He still doesn't get it. No. First of all, you just didn't have that much talent, dude. Or he had a good talent, but like Mozart was one of a kind. That's one thing. But the second thing, if there's a god, he'll hate you. If there is a god, there's a comedian that has a great joke about it. I hope it go, I know God fucking hates you. And that's a punchline to one of his jokes. And I felt about Salieri like that, because he's the one who's like tells you about how Christian he is, how he gave up how he leads this righteous life, but every single decision undermines Mozart, and he makes him believe he's only his only good friend he has left, and it's kind of crushing.
Yep. I would like to say in Salieri.
Mm.
Because Salieri is like incel coded as hell. Um,
A bit, yes,
a
tiny
bit.
bit, quote unquote.
It's just there's something about this man, and he's a zealot. That's
Hmm.
what he really is. And he believes to such extremes that anything that he believes has to be of divine
Yeah.
right.
Hmm.
And it's pathetic. It's just like you don't like this world owes you nothing. God
Yes.
owes you nothing.
Yep.
You you earn things and you gain respect. But and this is the thing, if you have ever played a sport,
Hmm.
if you have ever played an instrument,
Hmm.
if you've ever made art, you realize that at some point you reach the end
Hmm.
of your talent.
Or your peak.
There's a point where you realize that your talent only goes so far.
Hmm.
And it's a sobering moment. It's just like I played baseball for 6 years. I love baseball.
Hmm.
I had my limitations, and I was never going to be a great baseball player.
Hmm.
I was never going to go to the major leagues and stuff like that.
Hmm.
I've never played an instrument, but I wish I did. Like I wish I put time in to learn piano and stuff like that. But like Salieri, who is a talented man,
Yes.
thinks he is owed being a generational talent. But that's not how it works. And
Hmm.
that's what's so fascinating about his character is that and his conflict that he comes into it and he is so bitter because he thinks he is a righteous man and he deserves it because he is devoted to God.
Hmm.
And Mozart is a heathen, he is a pervert, he is so many things that to a Christian person would make them deplorable.
Yep.
But he has all the talent because
Hmm.
he is a literal musical genius.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that conflict of this film is so fascinating. And us seeing just how bitter and frustrated Salieri is through this whole entire film makes it so much more compelling watching Mozart do and fail. Because here's the thing, Mozart fails at life.
I was just gonna bring up that point. Yes.
And he fails at life, but succeeds to the nth degree in music.
Hmm.
Salieri has succeeded in life.
Yeah.
He has a cush job and he grew to an old man.
hmm
and he was living comfortably. Like that house was nice.
Yeah, I was
He
gonna say he's got money, like
Yeah, but he didn't have the thing that he thought he was owed, which was the talent of Mozart.
no, 100%. And like even like the upbringing, right? Until
Yep.
we only get the one scene when his dad, Salier's dad, chokes to death. But before that, it's just hinted like there's nothing, no hint of like his dad being mean or his family being mean. So like what we've been shown, we can presume he's had a nice childhood even. Whereas Mozart, as we've seen his dad, he paraded him around like a monkey because again he had the talent and he's always been this trained monkey for his dad. And then his dad felt like, well, you owe this to me because I gave you what you have right now. And the Salier, yeah, there's this. He even says in the movie, I've had a miserable life because I wasn't able to do this. And I'm like, dude, but you had a cushy job. He had a money,
Yeah.
he just didn't have this one thing. He just
One
didn't have this one
thing.
thing. But
One thing,
that's the
dude.
thing he craved the most. That's the
Yep.
thing. And and for Mozart, what he craved the most was, his dad to actually love him, not because of the musical genius, but because of his son.
He's your son.
Yeah.
And like Salieri comes from like you saw it was like a countryside
Mm-hmm.
and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. And
Italy.
he came from yeah, Italy, came from humble beginnings.
Mm-hmm.
And but he deserved thought he was deserved divine right.
Mm-hmm.
And then the costuming, hair, makeup, production design, like this is impeccable. First off, from the start, the aging makeup
Oh yeah.
they put on F. Murray Abraham is incredible. Like he looks so convincing as an old man. And like you see it a lot. This isn't like him showing up at the end of the movie for a
Mm-hmm.
scene in old man
Mm-hmm.
makeup. He anchors the film because you keep coming back to him. And then just the opulence of the wigs, the dress, the different places they go, the opera house in
Yep.
particular is like anybody who did anything technical on this film deserved Oscars,
Mm-hmm.
including cinematography. But like this did win, like this won 8 Oscars, so like it obviously swept up a lot of the
Yep.
technical awards, and it deserved every single one of them that it won.
Costumes. Yep. Yep. No, like I was gonna point out the makeup. So we are lucky that F. Murray Abraham is still alive. And if you've
Yes.
seen him in something like White Lotus season two, it's not that far off from how he looks like. The dude is just skinny. Like so, the
Yeah.
dude is naturally just always stayed skinny. But if he was a bit chubby, you can see that old age makeup actually predicting how he kind of looks like now. And I'm like, that's fucking because I've just watched him like last year in White Lotus season two,
Yeah.
which he's great in that by the way. And
Yes.
yeah, I'm like that age makeup, like that's a great job because it actually kind of looks like him. If he was like in a real life, he was chubbier, that would kind of be him. I was like,
Mhm.
damn, that's impressive.
It is really impressive,
Mm-hmm.
and it feels so natural, and it like that's the goal. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to make the person look older, but also like an actual old person, and
Yep.
not like somebody in makeup.
Yep.
But like just from top to bottom, all the costuming, the the all black outfit that his
Mm.
father wears, but then Salieri wears is so evocative in terms of what it conveys on screen.
It's visually striking. It's just
Yes.
and, like how it flips, and there's like a sad face and there's a happy face, and that's just the first time you see that, I was like, holy shit! Oh, that's awesome. That's just such a nice little, like almost like a simple detail, but it's so impactful.
Absolutely. And you like that whole party sequence. There's just so many costumes, so many wigs, so many this, so many that, so much that. And the one was it Don Giovanni, the
Mm-hmm.
opera, or
Mm-hmm.
what was with like the big like representation of like death. Like his
Yeah, that was
like
yeah. I think that was
yeah,
Don Giovanni. Yeah.
that outfit, that
Mm-hmm.
all black outfit was
Yep.
incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And also that dude's like bass. It
Oh.
was just like booming. just everything from a technical standpoint is absolutely incredible in this film. And obviously the leveraging of the music.
Mm-hmm.
And because when they do use the music and when you're sitting watching these performances on screen, it's so impactful. And how they use the music, like in that one scene where Salieri's own song
Yep,
gets
rewritten.
gets gets covered, rewritten, and turned into something so much more right in front of them. And they leverage the music narratively, thematically,
Mm-hmm.
and that is impressive. Being able to, because like there's so many movies that have like, oh, this has such a cool soundtrack, but
Yeah,
it's just a bunch of songs
yeah, yeah.
thrown in there. Like everything is meaningful here,
Mm-hmm.
and
No,
I think
yeah,
that's why it's so impactful.
correct. Like I was gonna bring up the scene where we rarely, this movie I've noticed on this watch, this movie rarely has a music in it if we're not in an opera,
Yeah.
or if somebody like Mozart is not composing the music. And I love that scene where he's composing it, and he is so in it he cannot even hear the knocking and his wife.
Yes.
Like, there's a
Yep.
scene where he's like, like composing for the black man, for the costume, for
Yeah.
Salieri, and he's so into it, and he can see it's destroying him, but like the music is so loud, he might as well be in an opera. And then his wife comes in, Wolfie, Wolfie, and he just like the music stops, and just like, oh, and he snaps out of it. And or like when they compose towards the end, when both of them, like where Salieri is not even managing to scribble everything Mozart's throwing at him, and it's like, no, 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 of course it's like this, it's double this, yes, oh, double trouble, yeah, yeah, those, yeah, double here, and then they stop here, they stop, oh, okay, and the third one, yeah, and it's just like it's so fascinating. And again, this movie every once in a while, like it shows you both of those are not really great people. Mozart is like childish at birth, maybe tiny question
Hmm.
mark, and Salieri we've already discussed in depth. But then the movie shows you why what made Mozart so great, and it was that the music he produced with seemingly no effort was something. It's something when you see master at play, like you just they make it look effortless. It's kind of like when we see when top peak Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal play against each other, like in a finale, they make those shots look so effortless. I always think, oh yeah, tennis. Okay, probably not that. And I know I would fuck up hard if I tried it on their level, but they are such a masters at their craft. They make it look like 20, 30, volley shot. They make it look like effortless. And I'm like, holy shit.
Like I'm a big baseball fan,
Mm,
and unlike most people, my favorite kinds of games are pitching duels
mm,
where you just have the two pitchers just killing it on either side and making those hitters look stupid.
yeah.
And there's just something masterful about seeing somebody, because like there's an art to pitching. There
Mm,
are hurlers who literally just throw it as hard as they can and hope they gas it past you. But there's
mm,
some people like watching a great pitcher like work in the strike zone, throwing these pitches, making them do things that you didn't think a baseball could do.
mm,
And just being able to see two of them going toe to toe with each other is fascinating. And seeing, so I feel like this is as good a time as any to talk about the Requiem scene
mm.
when they are collaboratively working and Mozart's like sitting there like dying.
Yep.
And he's just like, but then this, and then this, and he's just coming up with this
Yep.
off the top
Yep.
of his head. And it's so complicated. And yeah, there's moments where Salieri's like, wait, well, what? You're going
Like,
too
slow
fast.
down,
You're
slow
going too fast.
down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
slow down. And he's like, are you keeping up? Did you get that? Did you get that? Did you get that? Let me see it. Show it to me. And that whole entire back and forth
Mm-hmm.
is, and then you realize what could they have accomplished together?
Yep. Yep.
And, but the thing is, like, that scene is one of my favorite scenes in any movie.
Mm,
Just how the music's coming in, how the music's coming in. And that is the purest form of Mozart, of who this
mm-hmm.
man really was. through his music. And Salieri, I think that's the moment where he finally realized there's something special here, and I'm not it.
See, the thing is, right? Has he? Like he's always known he's better. Like he even says it to him like once or twice throughout the movie. I know you're better than me, but deep down, he still believes he was shafted. Like even like in the old age, like like when he still says, he still even at the end. And again, less in the movie, you might have had that realization where he like the old man would realize, no, it wasn't me who wasn't. I was good, but he was great. No, there's not a line like that, right? There is. He's still bitter because he still believes, even when he's older and dying, I was owed this, and he stole it. Like, yes, he was great, but he stole it from me, right? And
Well,
to me, yeah,
well, I I don't think those are mutually exclusive
hmm,
realization. Like I feel like I he there's key moments throughout this film where I think Salieri really realizes
yeah,
that he's not it.
hmm,
And you have the moment where Mozart rewrites his music in front of him and makes it infinitely better. He has the moment where he's like, and I watched, like, I had it stopped after 5 performances, but I was there every night
yeah, yep.
because, like, and that's the most dastardly thing, too,
It is,
with
yeah.
Salieri is just like, the dude knew this was amazing and killed it on purpose, but he sat there and soaked it up every time because he just knew how great it was. And then the moment where Mozart's wife brings Salieri all of his music, and he's looking at this, and he drops it, and he's just like, "Look at all this! Look at all this that he's done."
I was
And
just
I
gonna bring this up because there is a throwaway line that's easy to miss, and he's like, and those sheets had no correction on this. He says something like they had no corrections, no strikes, nothing like that. He just wrote it
purest
as it
form.
was, and that's it. Right? There was nothing else. And I think that was one of the early scenes when he's truly realized, hey, he's an actual music genius. I'm great, but he is a genius. And then it's like because like when he drops it, he's like, holy shit.
Well, and I think the Requiem scene finally helps him finally shows Salieri seeing
Hmm.
this genius at work and really seeing, like, getting inside his head.
Hmm.
And because and he can't process it, he can't keep up with it. It's something, like, it's not conceivable to him. He's just like, what's going on? And that's what's so powerful about that scene,
Hmm.
because at so many moments above before this is one of the few scenes where you see young Salieri showing any kind of vulnerability.
Yep, yep.
And I think that's what makes that scene so powerful and makes it stand out, is that he's, like, showing to Mozart, because before that, he he's composed
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
while watching Mozart change his song. He's
No,
off in a box
yes,
to the
yes.
side watching him, and he might have dropped those sheets, but he doesn't show his hand to
Hmm.
Mozart's wife. This is the one moment he lets the facade down and shows that he actually sees an appreciation and is in awe of what Mozart's doing.
I see this is interesting because I read that scene slightly different. I don't agree with you, but I read it slightly differently. I thought that was the only scene in that movie where he finally sees him not as a genius because I feel like he's seen him as a genius like throughout the movie. I think this is the first scene where he sees him as a human and where he sees what he's done to this human that put him in this state, and then where he almost regrets what he's done. Whether it was showing up in
Almost.
that costume, yeah, exactly. Whether it's showing up in that costume to scare the fuck out of him and like put him in a mind space where he wanted him to. Whether it was canceling or sabotaging his like opera so they only get 5 or 7 screenings maximum. I thought that Requiem scene was so powerful and so important because that was the one scene where he finally not just sees the genius, but he sees the man behind the genius. And almost, if I feel like if it wasn't for the wife and she has a good reason why she doesn't want him to be there because of what he does to her, right? How he humiliates her in like 2 hours before that.
Hmm.
I thought if it wasn't for her and his son coming over, he would probably actually not turn up into that better old man. He would almost confess, and therefore maybe Mozart would forgive him, and then maybe he would forgive himself and would finally let go of this. But given he never had that absolution from him, I thought this is the one of the pieces of that puzzle where even despite like him being old, he still thinks there is something that's not entirely my fault and I'm the own this. But I thought that was the key for me. That was that's what I took from this scene at this go around. I thought like this was the first and only moment where he sees the man behind the genius and realizes I shouldn't have put him through what I've put him through, and he still believes he died. Mozart dies in this movie. Spoiler.
Hmm.
Mozart dies in this movie believing Salieri was one of his closest friends.
Yep.
And that dawns like I think
Just
I
evil.
not only evil, but that must if you have any bit of conscience, that must dwell on you and fucking eat you up and eat you up. And I think that if Mary Abraham, that performance,
So, couple thoughts.
tell me,
So, one, the almost is what still makes him
yep,
this villain at the end
yep,
that
yep,
is confessing and everything, and that's what makes it so interesting.
mm-hmm.
Because it would be less interesting
Correct,
if it was a full
yes,
getting there. Two, I think if we piece together here, Salieri is letting his guard down and his
mm-hmm.
facade
Mm-hmm.
and showing his vulnerability in those moments. And to be honest, it might really be because it's the first moment that he sees Mozart being a human going through his process. Because for so much of this, he just sees
A child, like
the child in front of him.
unbehaved, yeah,
He sees like because at the end of the day, who's the real Mozart? I think
mm-hmm.
it's when Mozart is making his music,
Yep,
is where he's in his purest form, and this is the only time Salieri gets to see it.
mm-hmm.
And I think they both let their guards down and let them show themselves for who they really are.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a humbling moment for
Mm-hmm.
Salieri, but not humbling enough
Yeah, yep,
for
yep,
him to like really. And it's just like it's a scene, it's a moment of vulnerability where he lets his guard down
mm-hmm.
and then he gets his guard back up, but like we see behind it, and that's why that scene is so compelling. There's
It
so
is,
many layers to it,
yes,
and there's
yes.
so much going on from like a character standpoint, a thematic standpoint, from a directing standpoint, from a sound design standpoint, the music and everything. Oh,
If
it's
again,
such
if
an
we had
amazing.
more biopics like this, I think many people would view biopics more favorably.
Yes. And then at the end of the day, I think the two biggest last pieces that really talk about this, Abraham and Holtz.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's so very interesting that they both got nominated for Best Actor and didn't split the vote enough so that one of them did win.
Yep.
And F. Murray Abraham won for this, which one he is low key one of my favorite actors because of
Mm.
things like the Grand Budapest Hotel,
Oh yeah.
him as Mr. Mustafa, Zero as an adult.
Mm.
There's just something so moving about his
Mm-hmm.
voice and his cadence. And, Agatha and I were happy here, at
Yeah.
least for a little while. That guts me. Like every time I watch that movie. And even like like a just a single scene in Inside Llewyn Davis, where
Mm.
he's across from Oscar Isaac and gives him that sobering truth at the end. And then I loved him in Mythic Quest, that
I
show.
still haven't seen it.
And then he was fantastic. He's
Okay.
playing similar creepy old Italian dude
His
in White
specialty.
Lotus, in White Lotus and Mythic Quest. And there's something just what he brings to this role. They're like the he's so animated through his storytelling
Hmm.
in the frame narrative is so engrossing and impactful. And then the way that he hides so much in the moments when he's a younger man, and those moments where he finally like lets it seep through. There's just so many compelling elements to this movie, but it would not work
Hmm.
if you didn't have somebody as Salieri. And what's so interesting is F. Murray Abraham's performance is masterful as somebody who is not.
Yep.
And that's compelling for sure.
No, 100%. Like, what I noticed about F. Maris Abraham's performance the most is it felt so controlled, where you can tell the actor basically, if I need to take 5 steps to get from this point to this point, I will only take 5 steps and I'll not move a single muscle more than that, than it's required. Because he needs to be so constructed. He needs to be that, like, uptight. He needs to be this, like, precise. He's devoted his life to God. He's not touching women. He's living what he believes is a great Christian life. And
Mm.
I feel like, in if it was anybody else, it would show a bit too much, because these performances sometimes can come across as "give me the Oscar." Speaking about Bradley Cooper in the Maestro, and he masks it so well that you can tell he's a character actor, you can tell he's a trained actor, but at the end of the day, you see all the tools, you see all the bells and whistles of all his performance, but it still never pulls you out of that movie. He is still grounding that movie, and a movie about that's called Mozart. I would argue, and I will make that argument soon. Tom Holtz, I didn't realize he was nominated as an leading actor. He's not leading actor in a movie that's called Mozart. He's his supporting character. He is
Yeah.
clear supporting character. I don't understand how they were nominated in the same category. That's bullshit. But okay. So yeah, like, for that, to have in a movie called Mozart, to have Salieri be the main antagonist, that's kind of protagonist. Not kind of, he is the protagonist,
Yes.
and so in control, not just the story, because again he is also a narrator, but of everything he does. But it doesn't ever come across telegraphed, trained. It comes across naturally. I like that. This might be one of the most deserved Oscar wins in my eyes. Like, F. Murray Abraham, and as you say, every time I see him in a movie or in White Lotus, I'm like, oh, I know I'm in for a good time, because he is the character actor who you're always happy to see on screen, because they will they will deliver.
This is up there for me with Daniel Day Lewis's Daniel Plainview,
Mm-hmm.
George C. Scott as George S. Patton,
Mm-hmm.
as like this is what acting is.
Yeah.
And F. Murray Abraham was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And not only did he give the performance of his career, Tom Holtz gave the performance of his career because what else was Tom Holtz in?
Yeah, beats
Animal
me to be
House.
honest.
He's the main character from Animal House.
Wow.
And I remember watching this for the first time because I had watched Animal House before that.
Mm-hmm.
And just being like, is that the kid from Animal House? And it is. And like I really like him in Parenthood too. He's a
Mm-hmm.
supporting character in that. Like Tom Holtz, you would think that it's just the
That
and like
laugh.
all of that kind of stuff. But it is that scene with the Requiem where
Mm-hmm.
like If they did run him as best supporting actor, he probably would have won.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's that scene where you see all of all of the pent up energy and everything exhausted out of him, and it's just him in his rawest form making his music and being that genius. And
Mm-hmm,
it's the vulnerable scenes like the Requiem. It's the vulnerable scenes with his father
mm-hmm,
that makes him so much more interesting as a character than just like the clown. And but the thing is he has such confidence, he has such ignorance, he has such childish just antics and drive and energy,
mm-hmm.
but there's something underneath all of that, and Tom Holtz is able to shift from that to this and still be so believable in both.
Mm-hmm.
And this film is anchored by two incredible performances, along with literally everything else about it that's masterful. And that's why this is such an amazing film and one of my favorites.
Yeah, no, that's a solid pick. Again, it's a great movie. It's definitely worth watching. Whether you watch the normal, quote unquote, that's like 2 hours
Yes.
20 cut, or the director's cut, which I watched, that's 3 hours. Yeah, I don't think you will regret watching this, and you will be reminded maybe that hey, if done well, biopics can be fucking amazing. And even the 3 hour director's cut didn't feel like 3 hours. Like I'm just gonna say, like maybe felt a tad long here and there, like here and there, sure, but overall didn't feel like 3 hours. And yeah,
Absolutely. And this is a great film, which is why it's on my list here.
mhm.
But Luke, thank you so much for coming on and talking about one of my favorite movies with me.
Anytime, Shane. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And next month, my brother will be on as talk about The Nightmare Before Christmas,
Nice.
which I love to pieces and have watched I don't know how many times. But that one's only like an hour and 15 minutes, so to be fair. But thank you all for listening. Make sure to like, comment, and share on this episode. Have you seen Amadeus? What do you feel about it? What's your favorite biopics? Make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. The SPM Crew Podcasting Network is ever expanding. And if you want to be a part of the crew, reach out, check out our website, whether it's being a guest or launching your own podcast. And if you like our logo, you should check out my buddy Joe, who created the logo for this, which this is probably honestly my favorite logo for anything that I do. It really captured what I was going for, which is me sitting there at a drive-in looking at an old school drive-in screen out in the wasteland because branding.
Mhm.
You should check out his Etsy store. He has a lot of great stuff. And finally, most importantly, thank you as always for tuning in and supporting the Wasteland Vintage Roadshow here on the SPDM Crew Podcasting Network.